about comics. Let's talk about comics. Let's talk about comics. Let's talk about comics. Around by YouTube, it's your boy Charles, and it is time for a second look, where I take a second look at a comic book that I previously read or possibly reviewed before. And today we're going back to 2021 to Image Comics Nocterra. This book for me was kind of like a milestone moment in my comic book collecting, because up until that point I had really stuck with a lot of established characters and established properties. I was really into Red Sonja, Vampirella, a little bit of Batman, Harley Quinn, stuff like that had a lot of history. But I, was looking up upcoming releases. I saw the cover, which really appealed to me. I read the premise, and it seemed intriguing. So I jumped into it at issue 1, and it ran for about 16 issues, and I think it had at least 2 one-shots. I have the whole collection, and you can actually get them in trade paperback right now at very good prices. And it is one I highly suggest. It is kind of a post-apocalyptic story about the sun just going dark. And what that spawns are these monsters called shades that end up taking over the world. And what these shades are is they are mutations of everything that infect anything that's in the darkness. And so it can be a human that becomes a human monster, or a hybrid of a human and something else, or a dog, or plants. And these things are destructive, deadly, and the only protection you have from them are bright lights. And it starts off as if we're talking about the series in general, it goes from the story of a brother and sister trying to survive as they can in this harsh environment. It really expands by issue 16 into a grand kind of a universal story, where the world is literally at stake. And this first issue, going back to it after reading the series, it sets a lot of the things that you become familiar with in place. And, like one of the main villains, Blacktop Bill, he is introduced in the last few panels. And he is a character that has a huge impact throughout the series. You meet Val and Emery, the brother and sister, and you get to know their story, how they were adopted, and how Val, she was almost predestined and really felt like it was kind of her cursed destiny to live in this darkness. She was blind, and where she was from, she couldn't afford to get a surgery to remove the cataracts. And so when she was adopted, she was adopted into a family that could afford to have her cataracts removed. And when they were, it says that she cried because, that familiar darkness, that safe place was gone. And after the darkness, she felt like the darkness was coming back for her personally, in a way. And so there are lots of heavy themes and things that really relate to humanity more than just the literal light and darkness. But I think, what it speaks to our primal fear of the dark and what people are in the darkness and what we can become. And we start in their small town in Colorado, where you meet them, and they're thinking back on the day that everything went dark, an event they called the Big PM. And they were in class, and it's, these panels right here really contrast what you see throughout the whole series. It goes from bright and happy to getting slightly darker. And by the time it's completely dark, that's, the art takes that turn with you. And you feel the darkness throughout the entire series. And we go from the first Big PM thing to we fast forward to where now Val is a trucker who goes by the tag Sundog, and her specialty is driving these trucks with all these lights. You know, she's called a ferryman, and she ferries people and things from outpost to outpost. And fortunately for them, the city they lived in was having a festival celebrating the city's light industry because they literally made their whole economy based around making light bulbs. And so they had good fortune of being in a place with a lot of LED lights and spotlights and things going on. And that became one of the major outposts of safety in this new dark world. And Val, her job was to ferry people from outpost to outpost. And her brother designed a lot of the technology and the weapons that were used against shades and was kind of her tech guy, the guy that developed her weapons in this new world. And she, you know, seems especially comfortable in this world because of, you know, her history with the darkness. And we go from meeting that little girl who was just first cured of her blindness to this ferryman who is driving desolate highways, carrying scared people, and devouring these monsters. Um, the art and the action is very dynamic, and it's, you know, grotesquely beautiful as well. And I know it's probably too late to say this because there are going to be spoilers, but it's a book from 4 years ago. So that's why this segment is called A Second Look. So, you know, I'm not going to give away. I mean, there are lots of key plot points from number one that I'm giving you, but trust me, the story gets a lot more complex and deep. And like I said, it builds from the story of Val and Emery trying to make their way in this one outpost to a much larger scale. And when Val makes it back to the outpost, we meet her brother Emery in person. We find out that he is in a quarantine because he snuck out and got affected by the darkness. And so now we not only have this post-apocalyptic angle, but there is a ticking clock added to the post-apocalyptic angle of them trying to get Emery treated before he goes full shade, and the distrust of the other people in the outpost of Emery. And toward the end of the book, they're offered a mission by this mysterious old man who is with his granddaughter. And he offers them the chance of a lifetime to possibly reverse this whole thing. If he can get them to 600 something miles to this other outpost. And she knows that it's a long shot, but she also knows that Emery is not going to make it without a long shot. And so they take off on this risky mission to save the world, but more from Val to save her brother, to keep him from turning into a shade. And after they leave is when we meet them, one of the main protagonists, Blacktop Bill. And he is looking for the old man and his daughter, and he establishes himself as a very menacing, dark character who is dangerous. And we see him being confronted by the outpost after Val and Emery have left. And that's where the book leaves off with this cliffhanger of Blacktop Bill versus this outpost, and Val and Emery moving this grandfather and granddaughter up to the divide where he claims that there is sun and there is a way to help her brother. And so I highly suggest, if you haven't read this, check it out. It's from Image Comics, 2021. You probably will not be able to find the individual issues. I know that you can find number one in the Image First books that they put out for $1. You can find those at Midtown Comics, most dollar bins at your stores, but you're really going to have to find this, I think, in trade paperback. It's probably going to be about 4 volumes because it went 16 books and 2 one-shots at least. I think there may have been a third, I'm not sure. No, I think there were two. There was the Blacktop Bill one shot, and then the one shot featuring Val. Um, I'm not gonna give away. I'm not gonna talk too much about that because that would give away major spoilers to the rest of the series. And I think that is something that I can refer to you if you are a fan of science fiction and comic books. You will not be disappointed. This is one of the more ambitious books, I feel, from Image Comics. So that's my thoughts on Nocterra, #1, and the series as a whole. Check it out at a local comic book store. And if you don't have a local comic book store, I always suggest my friends over at Coffee and a Comic. They ship nationwide and have great deals on shipping. And if you're in Wyoming, check out Spellbound Apothecary and Entertainment. They ship statewide for free when you order over 35 bucks worth of books. So, and if you're in Casper, you can get a next day delivery. So I'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep reading in books. You know I will.